Welcome to a journey through humanity's darkest chapters, where archaeology uncovers stories of violence, survival, and tragedy that shaped who we are today. From skulls pierced by leopard fangs to mass graves filled with bound victims, these ancient deaths reveal a side of our past that's both shocking and profound. Stick with me as we dive into the archaeological record to uncover the chilling truths of our ancestors' lives. Hit that subscribe button and let's get started. Let's rewind millions of years to a time when humans weren't at the top of the food chain. Our ancestors lived in constant fear of becoming dinner for ferocious predators. One of the most haunting examples comes from South Africa, where a fossil known as SK54, a skull cap of a young Paranthropus robustus from 1.5 million years ago, tells a terrifying story. This juvenile hominin didn't die peacefully. Its skull bears two small, perfectly round holes, and according to the Australian Museum, these match the lower canine teeth of an ancient leopard. Picture it: a leopard snatches this young creature, drags it up a tree, and feasts, just as modern leopards do today. In the 1970s, paleoanthropologist Dr. C.K. Brain confirmed that these puncture marks align exactly with a leopard's bite. It's a stark reminder of how vulnerable our early ancestors were. But leopards weren't the only threat. Another fossil, the tawny child, an Australopithecus africanus, who lived 2.3 million years ago, met an equally gruesome fate. Its tiny skull shows puncture marks and fractures eerily similar to those found on modern primates killed by eagles. That's right, our ancestors weren't just hunted on the ground. They were snatched from the skies by birds of prey. These deadly encounters forced our species to evolve. Social bonds, sharper tools, and heightened awareness became our weapons for survival. But as we grew stronger, a new threat emerged, one far more dangerous than any predator. Can you guess what it was? Keep watching to find out. Fast forward to 10,000 years ago, near the shores of what was once Lake Turkana in Kenya. Here, archaeologists uncovered a site that changed everything we thought we knew about prehistoric violence. At Nataruk, researchers from Cambridge University found the remains of 27 people, men, women, and at least 6 children. What makes this discovery so chilling? 10 of the 12 best preserved skeletons show clear signs of a violent, merciless death. Skulls were crushed with blunt force, limbs were shattered, and arrowheads were lodged in bones. One man even had an obsidian blade stuck in his skull. Dr. Marta Mirazonla, who led the 2016 study published in Nature, called the injuries shocking in their brutality. But it gets worse. 4 victims, including a woman in the late stages of pregnancy, had their hands bound before they were killed. Imagine the horror: tied up, helpless, facing a brutal end. The attackers used a deadly mix of weapons: arrows for distance, clubs and stone knives for close combat. This wasn't a random brawl. It was a planned, coordinated assault. The bodies were left where they fell, with no attempt at burial, suggesting the attackers had no remorse. Why did this happen? Researchers have 2 theories. First, Nataruk's location was a prehistoric paradise, with abundant fish and fresh water. It might have been a territory worth fighting for. Second, this could reflect a darker truth. When different groups of hunter-gatherers met, violence was a common response. Professor Robert Foley, a co-author of the study, argues that our capacity for lethal aggression evolved alongside our ability to cooperate and care for each other. Nataruk challenges the idea that warfare only started with farming and cities. These hunter-gatherers had no wealth or land to defend, yet they slaughtered each other with chilling precision. What does this say about human nature? Let's keep digging. Now, let's travel even further back, to 13,400 years ago, in what is now Sudan. The Jebel Sahaba cemetery, discovered in the 1960s during salvage work for the Aswan High Dam, is one of the earliest records of sustained human conflict. Archaeologist Fred Wendorf unearthed 61 skeletons, men, women, and children, all bearing marks of violence. Broken bones, fractured skulls, and stone projectiles were either embedded in their bodies or scattered nearby. At first, Wendorf thought this was a single catastrophic massacre. But a 2021 reanalysis by Isabel Kraevker's team, published in Scientific Reports, revealed something even more disturbing. The skeleton showed over 100 lesions, both healed and fresh. About 25% of the individuals had survived earlier attacks, only to be killed later. This wasn't one event, it was a way of life. These people lived under constant threat of raids and ambushes, with death coming not in a single blow, but through a relentless series of attacks. Physical anthropologist Christopher Knuzel notes that this challenges the myth that warfare is a modern invention. The Jebel Sahaba people lived during a time of major climate change, at the end of the last ice age. Scarce resources likely fueled these conflicts, turning neighbors into enemies. This site shows us that violence wasn't just an occasional outburst, it was a grinding, everyday reality for some of our ancestors. Ready for more? Let's move across the ocean. Jumping forward to 1325 CE, in what is now South Dakota, we find one of the most horrific massacres in North American prehistory. The Crow Creek site, home to a village of the initial coalescent culture, ancestors of the Arikara people, was a fortified settlement along the Missouri River. That fortification ditch hints they were already living in fear. In 1978, archaeologists, with permission from the tribal council, uncovered the remains of at least 486 people killed in a single, devastating attack. The evidence is gut-wrenching: scalped skulls, severed hands and feet, and decapitated bodies. Men, women, and children, all were victims. This wasn't just a fight. It was a slaughter. The attackers left no one spared, and the scale of the violence suggests a deep-seated conflict, possibly over territory or resources. The fortified village shows that the people of Crow Creek knew danger was near, but their defenses weren't enough. This massacre reminds us that even as human societies grew more complex, with villages and agriculture, the specter of violence remained. It's a chilling testament to how resource competition and territorial disputes could turn deadly, even thousands of years ago. But the story of ancient death doesn't end with chaos. Let's explore a darker, more calculated form of killing. Around 7,000 years ago in Germany, during the early Neolithic period, we see a shift from chaotic massacres to something far more chilling: organized executions. At the Halberstadt site, archaeologists found a mass grave with 9 individuals, 8 young adult males and 1 young adult woman. What sets this site apart, according to Christian Meyer's 2018 study in Nature Communications, is the pattern of injuries. Unlike the random wounds of battle, these victims were struck almost exclusively on the back of the head. This wasn't a frenzied fight, it was methodical. The victims were likely subdued, possibly kneeling or bound, and executed one by one. After death, their bodies were dumped in a pit, limbs tangled with none of the care typical of Neolithic burials. Isotope analysis revealed a key detail: these people were outsiders, likely captives brought to Halberstadt from elsewhere. This suggests a chilling system of prisoner-taking and ritual killing that crossed geographic boundaries. Halberstadt is the earliest clear evidence of systematic execution in human history. It shows that by 7,000 years ago, humans had developed the social organization to carry out controlled, deliberate violence. Was this justice? Sacrifice? Punishment? We may never know, but it reveals a new level of complexity in how our ancestors dealt with conflict. Let's shift gears now to some individual stories that hit even closer to home. While massacres grab headlines, the archaeological record also preserves personal stories of survival, suffering, and death. These individual tragedies remind us that every skeleton was a person with a life, not just a statistic. Take Shanidar 1, a Neanderthal man from 45,000 years ago in northern Iraq. This guy was a survivor. He had a crushing skull injury that likely blinded one eye, a withered right arm amputated above the elbow, arthritis, and other injuries. Yet he lived for years after these traumas, suggesting his community cared for him despite his disabilities. His careful burial shows a spark of compassion in a brutal world, reminding us that even in prehistoric times, humans looked out for each other. Then there's a Homo heidelbergensis from 400,000 years ago in Zambia. This individual's skull shows massive cavities and abscesses from severe tooth decay and gum disease, unusual for prehistoric diets low in sugar. It's likely this person died from the infection, a painful reminder that disease was as deadly as any predator. Another case, Kanema 1808, a woman from 1.7 million years ago in East Africa, shows abnormal bone growth on her arms and legs. Researchers think she died from vitamin A poisoning, possibly from eating a predator's liver, which can be toxic in high doses. These stories show that violence wasn't the only threat. Disease, accidents, and bad luck claimed countless lives. Want to know what ties all these stories together? Let's wrap this up. From the jaws of leopards to the arrows of rival tribes, from ritual executions to personal tragedies, the archaeological record paints a vivid picture of humanity's past. These ancient deaths aren't just gruesome stories, they're windows into how our ancestors lived, what they fought for, and how they survived. The violence at Nataruk, Jebel Sahaba, and Crow Creek shows that conflict has deep roots in our nature, often tied to resources or group identity. The executions at Halberstadt reveal how our societies grew complex enough to turn killing into a ritual. And the individual stories, like Shanidar, remind us that compassion and care were just as much a part of our story as violence. By studying these dark chapters, we connect with our ancestors across millions of years. Their struggles, triumphs, and tragedies are part of the same human journey we're on today. What do you think? Does this violent past surprise you, or is it just human nature? Drop a comment below, hit that like button if you learned something new, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's mysteries. Until next time, keep exploring the past. It's got a lot to teach us. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride through humanity's darkest moments. If you enjoyed this, share it with a friend who loves history or archaeology. And let me know what ancient mystery should we uncover next. See you in the next video.